This video is going to cover configuration setup. So configuration setup is an alternative to named positions. So what we're going to do here is instead of using named positions to guide the robot to certain places, we're going to use cell configurations instead. And this is new with the 2025 release of Onshape. The named positions will work sometimes and they will not work sometimes now. So configurations seem to be more reliable, although they are slightly more complicated to set up, but nothing too bad. So we're going to walk through that. For this robot, let's say that we want the robot to pick up this cylinder from a conveyor and place it in the box. So we're going to need a few points here. We'll first set the home configuration, which is the point that the robot can go back to every time. Typically, this is when all joint angles are 0. Although because joint 6 here and joint 4 here are lined up, when joint 5 is 0, this puts the robot in a singularity. So a lot of people will turn joint 5 down so that the wrist is pointed down and joint 5 is at 90 degrees. And in that situation, you can also call that a home position. It's just basically your robot's reset position. So we'll define a home position, and then we'll define a pick position where the robot would pick the top of the cylinder, and then we'll define a place position where it sets it in the bin. And in this particular situation, the hardest point of the bin for the robot to reach will be this far corner here. So that's the one that we'll choose as the place position. So first, let's go ahead and define a home position for the robot. So the easiest time to do this is right when you have loaded the robot in and before anything has moved. Now, if your robot has moved, that's okay. You just want to set it back to normal. So you'll go over here to the tree on the left, click the down arrow with the robot, then you'll scroll down to the mate features. And you can just click on any of your joint mates, and it will show you, this is showing joint 5 is at 0. Say we want joint 5 to be at 90 degrees, so this is pointed down for our home position. And so we'll just type that in and press enter. So now we need to know what is that point actually. We'll click on it, and you can see down here in the bottom that we have 1.96 in the X, 0 in the Y, and 1.771 in the Z. So this is the point that we will set as our home position. So we need to go ahead and actually put a mate connector there. So the mate connector button is this one, looks like a little pie. It'll actually be easier for us to do this when the robot is not there. So we'll go ahead and hide the robot first. And now we can more easily set our mate connectors. So let's set a mate connector here. And we will call this mate connector home. And you'll notice that, okay, this is on the origin. This is not where we wanted it. That's okay. We'll click move because now we can type in the coordinates that we wanted, which were the 1.976 millimeters or meters in X, 0 meters in Y, and then 1.771 meters in Z. And you see that it moved to that spot. So we're going to call this home point. Okay. So now we need to mate the robot to that point. So let's make the robot show back up again. And then we will drag it out the way a little bit. And then we'll do a revolute mate between the robot wrist and that point. Call that our home mate. We want to do a revolute mate just so that the robot has a little bit of room to position itself if it needs to get into a different orientation. So we'll click the wrist of the robot. We'll click that. We'll click solve. So there we go. And let's call this home. Okay, so we set a home point and we set a home mate. So now the next thing that we need to do is set the pick and the place. So we'll go ahead and set a pick point. So the pick point, we want to be the top of this cylinder here. So we'll call this pick point. And then we'll set a place point over at this far corner of the bin. Call that place point. Okay, so then for the pick position, we need to mate the end of the robot to the pick position. Now, right now, it's mated to the home position. So we need to go to home, right-click, suppress that mate, and then do a revolute mate from the robot's wrist. Oh wait, that's home point of origin. So we're not gonna do that. Let's just drag the robot out the way just a teeny bit. Okay, that was more than a teeny bit. That's okay. Revolute mate from the wrist of the robot to that top of that cylinder. So robot gets it, and we're gonna call this pick. So then what we need to do is we'll move that to after the pick point, and then we need to mate the robot to the place point. So we'll go ahead and suppress the pick mate. And then going from pick to place is too far for this robot. In real life, you would want to set some waypoints for it to touch in between. But what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and unsuppress the home mate, and the robot goes back to home. Okay, so now we'll suppress the home mate. And so we can move the robot again. So we'll drag the robot a little bit closer. All right, so it's just a little bit closer, and we will do a revolute mate from the wrist of the robot to the place position. Solve that. You see the robot has gone there, and we'll call this place. Now we can make some configurations now that we have all of the points that we need set up and we know that they work. So I'm going to go ahead and suppress the place and then unsuppress the home and get the robot back to its original position. So that is how you set up the points initially. Now to do configurations, go over here to the right, click Configuration Panel. The Configuration panel shows up. And we will configure assembly. And the default, we're going to go ahead and just call that home. Then we'll make another one called pick. We'll make another one called place. And actually, let's make another one called free. And free will just be if you want to drag the robot around. Then let's go ahead and we can actually right click and set that one as the default. So I will go ahead and move that up. Okay. So you'll see that home is in bold, and that means that that's the configuration that we're in right now. So over here in the configurations, you can see that this says home. So in home, we want to have the home mate active and the other mates suppressed. So we will click, you can see it says no assembly features are configured. So we need to actually make sure that it knows that the home mate is the one that needs to be active at this point. So we go to configure assembly features, and it says select instances or mates to configure. So we need, all of these are important. We'll say home needs to be unsuppressed. And you'll see it showed up for everything. That's okay. We'll fix all of that. Pick. We want that suppression box active, and then place. We want the suppression box active. Okay, so for home, the home mate needs to be unsuppressed. We'll click done here. So in home, home mate needs to be unsuppressed so that home is active. The other two should be suppressed, so we'll leave those unchecked. Now in free, we want everything suppressed, so we'll uncheck there for home so that in free we can drag the robot around. So we see that home is working right. We can go ahead and check free, and that should let us drag the robot. Okay, yes, the robot is dragging around, and then we will right-click, switch to home. The robot goes back where it should. Now on pick, if we go right-click, switch to pick, we see that the robot did not go to the pick place, and that's because if we look at the configurations, home is still checked. So we'll uncheck home, we'll check pick, and there it goes. And now for place, we will uncheck home, we will check place, and we will switch to place. There we go. So we got place, we got pick, we'll go back to home. There we go, and then we'll go to free. And free will just let you move it anywhere that you want to. So there it goes. Now, if we go to home, and then we go back to free, it actually picks back up in the same place that you left it. So this is how to set configurations. I'm going to go ahead and close that panel. So this is how that you can set configurations for your robot to pick, to place, or to go to any point in between.